Good day, friends. I apologize for the lack of videos. There were good reasons for this. The failure of the agreement of the World Organization to combat the pandemic means that the sheep will soon be released from the human farm. White's victory in the battle for planet Earth is now becoming apparent for several reasons. For example, Reuters reports, negotiations on the development of a global pact to combat future pandemics have ended without any draft agreement by the expected date. We also learned from Pentagon sources that millions of illegal military-age men who have arrived in the United States since 2021 have been brought in to ensure the implementation of the planned now-failed World Organization Agreement to combat global chaos. Now these people are being rounded up and sent home. There are many other signs of black hats being affected, which we will discuss below. The consequences are much more serious than most people think. A good metaphor for what is about to happen is the movie The Island. In this film, people lived in an underground bunker and were told that they would be protected from a natural disaster. However, soon the lucky ones will be allowed to go to Paradise Island. In fact, these people were clones whose purpose was to supply organs to wealthy clients. A trip to the island meant organ extraction and death. At the end of the film, the clones were released to live their natural lives. Now the same thing will happen to all of us. We are now living a short and miserable life, literally driving ourselves to death, far ahead of our natural life expectancy. Soon we will all be free, working 20 hours a week or less, and living like millionaires for thousands of years. If this sounds unlikely, think about the consequences of the following message. A British girl has regained her hearing after becoming the first person in the world to take part in a new revolutionary test. This was achieved by adding some genes to the area of her ear. This is just proof that we are able to change our genes the way we want. This means that we can modify genes that shorten our lifespan. We can also add superpowers such as the radar abilities of a bat or the eyes of an eagle. Until now, the rulers of the planet have forbidden the use of medicines to improve human health. The only thing the medical profession is allowed to do is treat diseases. This has led to the fact that pharmaceutical companies have received multi-billion-dollar incentives to create problems, to earn money for their treatment. The Rockefellers and other owners of a private non-governmental organization have invented many diseases to do just that. Imagine that instead you could earn trillions of dollars by improving people. The old establishment made all sorts of far-fetched excuses for why we should prohibit people from improving their genes. They are also unreliable. For example, they say it will lead to a genetic gap between rich and poor. The answer to this question is to make this technology available to everyone who wants to get it. They say it can cause irreversible genetic changes that are passed on to children. This is a lie, because we have the ability to reverse these changes if we want to. The only legitimate argument they make is that we need to make sure the technology doesn't have unexpected side effects. This means that a thorough check is required. Besides, it will be a matter of free decision. Just as the Amish chose 19th century technology, many people will choose to live a short, genetically unimproved life. That would be their decision, and who knows, maybe evolution will recognize their rightness. However, many of us will have a desire to become practically immortal superhumans. My wish is to turn into a dolphin one day so that I can explore the ocean. When I finish my research, I will be able to return to human form. Technically, this is already possible now. The Khazar Group, which owns the health organization, had very different plans. They wanted us to become genetically incapable of resisting their rule. Their plans called for the elimination of 90% of humanity. All survivors, with the exception of Khazar members, were required to obtain digital identity cards that would link their access to food and everything else necessary for survival with a point of obedience social credit. They also had human farms in Ukraine and other countries. There, women were kept as slaves until they were disposed of at the age of about 25. They gave birth to babies, which they used in their dirty deeds. They would also raise obedient super soldiers to ensure their rule. The secret battle for planet Earth took place between these two alternate timelines for the future. One of them was to allow humanity to develop the way it wanted, and thereby provoke a new Cambrian explosion. Another was the constant enslavement of humanity in the service of the self-proclaimed Nazi super race. The Nazis have now suffered a complete defeat. The deaths of Klaus Schwab Rothschild, Bill Gates, Hillary Clinton Rockefeller, and others caused this. A big Khazar domino is coming soon. With that in mind, let's take a look at the geopolitical news over the past week, as it presents a snapshot of a changing time frame. The biggest changes occurred with the collapse of the Khazar mafia states of Israel, Ukraine, and the United States. This is thanks to the Alliance for the Liberation of the Planet, led by Russia, China, and white representatives of the Western military-industrial complex. Russia's contribution was particularly noticeable last week. In a sign that free people can determine their own future, Russia has just announced its goals for 2030. 82 goals include maintaining traditional moral and spiritual values, turning Russia into the fourth largest economy in the world, increasing the population, becoming a high-tech superpower, creating comfortable and safe living conditions, promoting the well-being of the environment, etc., etc. The goals include to maintain traditional moral and spiritual values, to make Russia the fourth largest economy in the world, to increase the population, to become a high-tech superpower, to create comfortable and safe living conditions, to promote the well-being of the environment, and so on. Sovereign states like Russia are building their own future. Slave-owning states such as the United States find themselves embroiled in wars that are not in the national interest and lead to the impoverishment of their own populations. By the way, this is Mikhail Mishustin, chairman of the Russian government and the real ruler of Russia. He is not a dictator, but the head of a committee that uses Putin as its PR avatar. Russia has put its plan into action by launching a massive offensive against Ukraine on all fronts. The Ukrainian resistance has collapsed, and the struggle in Ukraine is almost over, as sources in Polish intelligence, the CIA, and the Russian FSB consistently report. The U.S. military agreed to this. In addition, we learned from Pentagon sources that although Joe signed a bill offering Ukraine $61 billion worth of arms supplies, nothing has actually been and will not be delivered. Russians note that the term of office of Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky ends on May 21st, and the election of his successor has not yet been scheduled. Zelensky's popularity is in a state of free fall. The population accuses him of prolonging the war and postponing the presidential elections. It is reported that Ukrainian politicians are discussing who will be the next president and how they can legitimize him, French journalist Thierry Meisson reports. Since the war in Ukraine is almost over, the next step will be revenge for the destruction of Yugoslavia, Serbian intelligence sources say. Chinese President Xi Jinping was in Serbia last week, where he said, China supports the Serbian government in its actions to protect the territorial integrity of the country in the Kosovo issue. Background: Bill Clinton and Rockefeller destroyed Yugoslavia in order to appropriate the vast resources of strategic minerals in Kosovo. To this end, they destroyed Yugoslavia and turned the area around the mines into the criminal state of Kosovo. It's over now. After Ukraine and Kosovo, Israel will be the next domino to fall. Last week, the UN General Assembly voted overwhelmingly for the annexation of Palestine by 143-9 with 25 abstentions. This prompted Israel's ambassador to the United Nations to use a paper shredder to grind the UN Charter in front of the Assembly. This time, the US will not stop the world from trying to force Israel to stop its bad behavior. The White Hat Alliance forced us President Joe Biden to declare, I made it clear to Bibi and the military cabinet that they would not receive our support. This prompted Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to declare that Israel is ready to stand alone and fight with its nails in its war in Gaza. The noose around Israel is tightening. Netanyahu's avatar must be really nervous, or he has already disappeared, a Mossad source comments. For many, the noose is likely to literally tighten. On Friday, Colombian President Gustavo Petro appealed to the International Criminal Court (ICC) to issue an arrest warrant for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, whose government he called genocidal because of their affairs in the Gaza Strip. The United Nations Security Council has called for an immediate and independent investigation into the mass graves of hundreds of Palestinian bodies near hospitals in the Gaza Strip, discovered as a result of months of Israeli regime aggression against the besieged area. The population of Israel agrees. There are riots in Israel demanding the resignation of Benjamin Netanyahu. The fact that this headline, in a 2018 letter, Netanyahu asks Qatar to fund Hamas appeared in the Israeli news is a sign that Benjamin Netanyahu's avatar is running out. The unilateral coverage of events in favor of Israel also put an end to the coverage of events in the US media. In the video below, Piers Morgan made Israeli government spokesman Avi Hyman nervous when he asked him about the number of Hamas terrorists killed. According to Thierry Meisen, Israel has been ruled by a gang of criminals since 1948, and the population does not realize this. He notes Israel facilitates the largest money laundering operations and serves as a haven for some of the world's largest criminals. A representative of the Palestine Liberation Organization told me that he witnessed a group of diamond dealers arrive without customs inspection, accompanied by military personnel. These people and several clients exchanged diamonds and cash, and then left the country incognito. This kind of trade could not take place in any other state. For example, it turned out that Jared Kushner supports plans to turn the Gaza Strip into the next Dubai, including an international airport and a duty-free zone, after the end of the war. Jared Kushner is a priority target right now. He's a dead man walking. The reality is that the attacks on Gaza have stopped. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is now a zero-sum game. He had reached a dead end, thanks to Iran and Russia. All the alleged attacks on Rafah's refrigerators are computer graphics and old videos, says a Mossad source. Of course, many Israeli slaves will perish along with the devil's ship. The reality is that American society will collapse with Israel. White hats are coming to power. Pentagon sources say that the United States, with the Trump Central Executive Committee at its head, may indeed be under the authority of a succession government. Pascal Najati posted videos of the military landing in Guantanamo Bay Gitmo, the arrest and execution of Hillary Clinton, and the imposition of martial law in the United States. The news video is outdated, but why would Najati publish it now? MSM have completely deleted it. It looks like they're on ABC News with George Stephanopoulos and Fox News. This is, of course, wild, says a CIA source. Of course, the fight is still going on. As soon as the video was posted, a fake Hillary Clinton in a mask appeared on the scene, who claimed that 2024 could be the last election in history. This is a wild CNBC Morning Joe interview. You can see the line of her mask on her neck. Very clearly, a Pentagon source comments. Our own sources report that the material about Hillary will be republished in preparation for the official announcement of her death. A sign that they are preparing for this is that many sources have sent us old compromising materials about Hillary. The video, for example, shows how guilty Hillary Clinton was as US Secretary of State under President Barack Obama. The Khazar Group also asked former U.S. Chief of Staff Mark Milley to make a statement saying that the US had killed a large number of innocent people and therefore had no right to condemn Israel for its actions in Gaza. There are other signs that something is changing in the United States. For example, Judge Cannon postponed the trial of Donald Trump indefinitely in the case of secret documents in Florida. Perhaps he realized that he had been tricked by a fake political reality show. This article then appeared in the Epoch Times, a publication run by the State Department. Trump allegedly has secret plans to nationalize the Federal Reserve System. The Federal Reserve System could be federalized pretty soon, if the alleged plan of former President Donald Trump and his allies is confirmed. It is alleged that a small 10-page secret document is circulating in President Trump's team, providing for changes in the Federal Reserve System that could significantly change fiscal policy in the United States. It may be too late. Nebraska has joined dozens of U.S. states that call gold and silver money and pass laws stating that money does not include the central bank's digital currency. In addition, the nationalization of the Federal Reserve Bank would not change the fact that the United States is bankrupt compared to the rest of the world. Kristalina Georgieva, executive director of the International Monetary Fund, warns that debt servicing in the United States, which currently stands at about $34 trillion, absorbs more than 17% of government revenues, whereas in 2015 this figure was less than 7%. This cannot go on forever, because the burden on the United States will damage the costs necessary to service the debt, Georgieva said. This money has an opportunity cost. It doesn't flow into emerging markets where it can finance jobs and business opportunities for American companies. One sign of how these debts are being wasted is that Biden allocated $7.5 billion to recharge electric vehicles in November 2021. Today there are 7 charging stations, a total of 38 parking spaces. This headline is another example of a completely wasteful and dysfunctional government. The mayor of Chicago wants to allocate another $1 billion to schools, despite the chronic shortage of 43% of teachers. In addition, the trillions spent on the medical industry were almost exclusively directed to pharmaceutical companies and intermediaries, not doctors. A survey conducted by AMN Healthcare in 2022 in 15 major metropolitan areas showed that it takes an average of 26 days to see a doctor. According to a 2024 Medscape report, almost 50% of doctors report feeling burned. Here in Japan, the waiting time is often 0 minutes. Most of Biden's trillions of debt funds ended up in the hands of the usual suspects, such as BlackRock and Vanguard, who used them to buy up private homes across the United States. You can see new homes in Las Vegas, Nevada that are offered for rent only. This is a sign that the conspirators want to end home ownership and turn everyone into debt slaves on the principle of have nothing and be happy. The script was shown in a comedy show. They knew they could flaunt it, and no one would believe it. You can hear the laughter from the tin can being added to the broadcast. But the fact is that the rest of the world has woken up and is no longer financing this corruption and madness. The whole rotten structure is crumbling before our eyes. Even the Europeans have renounced the Rockefellers and the Khazars. One of the signs of this is that the IMF warns against us attempts to confiscate Russian assets, most of which are located in Europe. Europe, of course, has its own problems. In November 2023, members of the European Parliament voted for the dissolution of nations, the erasure of borders, the abolition of property, the nationalization of industry, and the replacement of democracy with the dictatorship of the European Party, warns Jerzy Kwasniewski, president of the Polish Institute of Legal Culture Ordo Juris. Last week in Belgium, at a conference NACAN organized by European conservative circles, there was serious opposition. When Nigel Farage, the architect of the Brexit movement, took the stage, the police suddenly burst in and announced the immediate closure of the event. The organizers of the event sued and ensured that the next morning the Belgian Administrative Court decided to end the police blockade. It turned out that the police operation was carried out on the instructions of Amir Cyrus, the mayor of this area of Brussels, who claimed that figures of the conservative religious right were present at the conference. He added that the organizers' vision is not only conservative, but also rejects the legalization of abortion, same-sex relationships, etc., and supports national sovereignty. This was stated to journalists on Monday by one of the leading Eurofascists, President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen, after a trilateral meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron and Chinese President Xi Jinping. The world cannot absorb China's surplus production. The truth is that the system is better in China, and that if the West does not revise its own system, it will only be a matter of time before we all work for the Chinese. But before that happens, the resistance of the Khazars has yet to be strengthened. For example, Alex Soros is plotting against Trump with Cindy McCain. John McCain, who was executed for treason, has a daughter who is following in his footsteps. Alex Soros, through the Soros Foundation, pays protesters to burn the American flag. As this one from Penn State University shows, you're also paying for the ongoing unrest on campuses across the U.S. These are not students. These are professional activists who are paid by Alex Soros and the Rockefeller Foundation. Then you can ask the Democrats in Massachusetts to tell you that illegal immigrants have priority over our veterans. In addition, in order to facilitate the disappearance and abduction of minor children, the Biden administration is seeking to end special judicial supervision of migrant children. Another piece of evidence of a desperate last-minute power struggle came from Justin Trudeau from Canada. He is trying to pass a bill on harm on the internet, which, among other things, provides for the following: life imprisonment for freedom of speech, previously convicted, deprivation of liberty, the law after the fact, anonymous accusers, etc. Trudeau is also trying to tax people fleeing his tyranny. However, do not count on the help of the fake opposition leader Pierre Poilievre. In 2020, his wife was CEO of Switch Health, a leading provider of testing kits for air travel. In addition, desperate and cornered psychopaths are still planning a global pandemic as a precaution to avoid being arrested as war criminals. You can see how former CDC Director Dr. Robert Redfield explains that the main threat of avian colds comes from U.S. laboratories. In the lab, I could make it very contagious to humans within a few months. It's a real threat. At the same time, they are trying to pin the blame on China. The letters from Congress are part of the Black Hats' attempt to blame China for COVID. We know that it was originally from Ukraine, and then it may have been sent to Wuhan and leaked from there. This whole scam was their plan, developed decades ago. This is a continuation of the circus performance for sheep. The audience gets smaller and smaller the more you wake up from reality, says the CIA doctor. These are just signs that the conspirators are going crazy because of the ongoing reaction to the attempted mass murder using a cocktail. Pharmaceutical companies are completely retreating on this front. However, paying minor compensation is too little and too late. War crimes tribunals are inevitable for these people. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is moving towards a new era of peace. Negotiations on the creation of a multipolar world federation of independent states are in full swing. A new one headquarters in Laos is being prepared. The work of allocating hundreds of trillions of dollars to enter a new era is also progressing smoothly. But don't expect anything before the summer, sources close to the White Hat's leadership say. The big question is what will be revealed to us after the establishment of world peace. We are still waiting for anti-gravity technology, medical bed, etc. They will become available to the general public. Even more startling news is possible. A sign that reality itself may change. Did you know that dozens of new cloud types have been discovered recently? I wonder what they call perfectly square, thin, rectangular clouds. We also note that the Vatican is preparing for publication a document containing guidance on distinguishing supernatural phenomena. In fact, we are talking about preparing for an alien visit to Earth. It is scheduled for mid-July or August, and thousands of people will witness it, says a secret source in the space program. Is this a Bluebeam project event, or will it be a Beyond Bluebeam event? We'll see about that soon.